Welcome everyone. Thanks a lot for staying with us. You're watching Plain Speak with me, Shivani Gupta. Shortly from now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi will receive a ceremonial welcome at the White House, an event expected to see close to 1,000 members in attendance, and there are multiple thousands outside waiting to catch a glimpse of him. Subsequently, Prime Minister Modi and President Biden will engage in a high-level bilateral dialogue. The discussions are expected to focus on economic, defense and technological partnership between the two countries and climate change. We're already seeing a spate of agreements being approved or signed between the two countries. Later in the day, Prime Minister Modi will address a joint sitting of the US Congress. He will become only the third leader in the world and the only Indian leader to do so twice. There is a certain momentum now building to this visit. India has also signed the Armistice Accords today. ISRO and NASA will now launch a joint space mission in 2024, we are told. This relationship is now receiving unprecedented thrust from both sides. And most part of the world is keen to see a positive effect for the world from the Indo-US partnership. It is also making a few very jittery for good reason. Are we truly in a new era for India-US relationship, and how will this friendship shape the world coming forward? We'll take those questions with our guests joining us in just a bit as we also get you live coverage from the White House. Let's also take a look at what happened on the second day of the Prime Minister's US visit. US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden welcoming Narendra Modi at the White House earlier this morning. Just before the White House meet, Jill Biden and PM Modi addressed an event on Skills for Future event at the National Science Foundation in Virginia as well, where Jill Biden emphasized on bringing world's oldest democracy and the world's largest democracy together. The big debate and the coverage that's coming up in just a bit as we bring you live of more what is happening at the White House. Are we in a new era for Indo-US ties?
अमेरिका के पास उच्च कोटि के शिक्षण संस्थान है, एडवांस टेक्नोलॉजी है, वहीं भारत के पास विश्व की सबसे बड़ी युवा फैक्ट्री है और इसलिए मुझे विश्वास है कि भारत और अमेरिका की साझेदारी सस्टेनेबल और इंक्लूसिव ग्लोबल ग्रोथ का इंजन साबित होगी।
If we want our economies to be strong, we need to invest in young people who are our future. We need to ensure that they have the opportunities that they deserve. Through Joe's Investing in America agenda, we're creating millions of good jobs in growing industries like clean energy and manufacturing.
It really made me aware of the depth of the intellectual and scientific collaboration between India and the United States.
I definitely agree with Prime Minister Modi. We have to be able to have partnerships, especially with the US, in order to expand.
It was very inspiring to be sitting there and also listening to him and his vision for India.
I want to first go across to Max Abrahams, author and international affairs expert, professor, joining us on the show. Max is one of those American personalities that met the Prime Minister in those closed-door meetings. Max, thanks a lot for your time. You've, of course, talked about how happy you were with the meeting with the Prime Minister and how he sat with you in that circle with humility. Before I talk to you about Indo-US ties and where this visit is taking them, you want to share with us a few things from that meeting?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I got an email from the ambassador seeing if I would be willing to meet with the prime minister. And of course, I said yes. The prime minister has many different meetings this week, the most important of which are with American government officials, including, of course, President Biden and his wife, Jill Biden. And so he's meeting in DC with current American officials. And this meeting was just a small group of those who are outside of government, about 5 of us from think tanks and universities. And what impressed me most was that we weren't told in advance any limitations on what we could say to the prime minister. There were no limitations on any questions that we could ask him. And that's sort of contrary to some of his critics who say that he's, very insular, that he's, authoritarian, that he doesn't face any kind of dissent. And this was absolutely the opposite. We sat together on around a small circle. So he wasn't trying to create, a huge amount of distance. And we went around the room and we said whatever we wanted to. He listened to us one by one. And then he responded through a translator.
So
and
what was your conversation like?
I don't really know if he learned anything from us, but I certainly learned something about him, and that is how accessible he was. And I did view it as a very sort of humble act to just sit among, a small group of those who are outside of government to hear some concerns and to take them seriously. So overall, I was very impressed with the meeting.
You want to share exactly what your exchange with him was about? What did you tell him? What did he tell you back?
Yeah, I don't really want to get into the specifics that much, but I can say something, relatively uncontroversial, which I did say to him. And that is that, perhaps the greatest asset that India has is its human talent. And as a professor based in Boston, I mentioned that some of my very best students are Indian students, and I have an excellent Indian co-author. And so the effects of that human talent are felt very strongly throughout American higher education. And so I thought I would share that with him.
All right. So, Max, you're an expert in international security in the areas of terrorism, counterterrorism, and U.S. foreign policy. Now, a lot of experts have been saying that while the name of the country is not being taken, this visit of the Prime Minister being a state visit and the amount of focus the Indo-US ties are getting right now are predominantly to counter China. Do you agree with that analysis?
Certainly, the media coverage is focusing on this angle of countering China, and it's not wrong. I will say that in the meetings that I have had with the actual parties to this Modi visit, that a surprisingly large portion of them focus on business ties between India and the United States, as well as talk about normative ties, moral ties, democratic ties, in the sense of really building a long-term relationship as allies in this rapidly developing world. After the Cold War, things have changed so much, and so I think that India is part of this new picture of great powers. And there's talk about India joining the UN Security Council, for example, and that's relatively new, at least among American officials, right?
Okay.
But there's no question that this important state visit happens in the shadow of growing American concerns of a rising China, the concerns that China is going to really contest the United States as a unipolar, hegemonic power in the world. And that more specifically, of course, there are concerns that China will make a move on Taiwan. And so India and China, they have a complex relationship. They do a huge amount of trade. India consumes more goods from China than any other country. But on the other hand, they're not close allies. And there's a sense that the United States, if there is, growing conflict with China, if there is war with China, that it would be very advantageous for the United States to be able to count on India even more, to side with the United States, as well as to develop, to build up its military power, both independently and, in concert with U.S. weapons systems. I spoke to a professor at the Naval War College who was saying that China would really have its hands full, with a naval war plus a land war if we could count on India. Now, I think that that's not realistic. There was a recent article out in Foreign Affairs saying that, India wants to maintain its neutrality. It's not interested in getting a war, getting into some kind of a war like that. And I think that that's correct. But nonetheless, there is growing concerns of China, and there's a feeling that India could be a very important asset in terms of counterbalancing that rising power.
Yes, I don't think anybody expects that India would join a war with the US, just like possibly US wouldn't join a war with India. But I think you're right about the fact that both will see each other as important assets if there were conflicts to be. But of course, India stands, as the Prime Minister repeats again and again, for no conflicts and for peace in the world. I do want to touch upon the fact that you mentioned...
I totally understand that. It's very premature to talk about any kind of an imminent war, even between the United States and China. And what India is really known for is carving out its own independent path and not being sucked into great power conflict. And so I would expect India to play a similar role as it's playing in terms of the conflict in Ukraine with Russia, where India is able to maintain its strong relationship with the United States without becoming a combatant.
Okay. Max, can I just request you to stay with us? Of course, we're also keeping one eye on the proceedings at the White House in Washington, D.C. And Kevin Liptak is joining us live from there, CNN White House reporter. Let's go across to Kevin also. Kevin, thanks a lot for your time. Lots of agreements between the two countries already taking shape. It's building up to some big announcements where the two leaders finally meet. Is there a sense in Washington that there could be a big surprise announcement?
I suppose there could be. I mean, and we will hear from Prime Minister Modi when he addresses Congress later today as well. But I think the major announcements that he's expected to cement with President Biden certainly center around this idea of cooperation in so many different areas, whether it's telecommunications, whether it's semiconductors, artificial intelligence. They are expected to also sign this agreement when it comes to space exploration. And certainly in the hope of American officials, they had hoped to agree to some of these arms sales agreements, hopefully to push India more towards the United States when it comes to that area and away from Russia. And so I think that those are the big takeaway items that the Americans certainly hope to cement when they sit down with Modi later today. But that doesn't necessarily preclude some other announcement that we haven't heard about yet. One thing that I have heard that they are planning to discuss, at least, is this idea of visas for Indian workers in the United States, perhaps making it easier for skilled workers to renew and obtain those visas. So that could be something as well that they come out of these talks and to announce later today.
President Biden is said to have told the Indian Prime Minister when they met a few weeks ago that he's receiving unprecedented number of requests for the meeting with Prime Minister Modi. So how large is this White House ceremonial welcome and state dinner that is being hosted? What do you think are going to be the highlights tonight?
Yeah, well, it certainly looks like an enormous crowd on the South Lawn today, and it is raining, so they were able to get a significant number of people onto the South Lawn to watch this. And the state dinner tonight is also taking place not inside the White House, but in a larger tent outside. So that's usually an indication that they had a number of people that they felt it was important to invite. And of course, there is such a large Indian American community who will want, some of them at least, will want to participate in this event. So I do think that this is one of the larger events that the White House has hosted recently. It's not necessarily at the scale of the big rally that President Trump and Prime Minister Modi attended in Houston, Texas, in the later years of the Trump presidency, called Howdy Modi. Certainly not the size of the rally that Modi hosted for President Trump in Ahmedabad, the Namaste Trump rally. But it is a significant event, a large event that you're seeing taking place now at the White House and that you'll see unfold over the course of the day.
Kevin, I read somewhere that Mr. Biden is not attending a rally, but Mr. Modi is bringing the rally to the White House. Would that be appropriate to say?
There you go. Yeah. I mean, I think that's probably fair to say. And I think, you know, the Indian American community in the United States is not uniform. Like, there are certain groups of Indian Americans in the U.S. who do not support Prime Minister Modi, that they oppose some of the things that he is doing in India. But of course, there are plenty who also do support him and certainly have a pride in being part of that community. The other element that President Biden will want to introduce Modi to is this business community. Certainly, they want to increase trade ties, and that is an enormous part of this visit. And certainly, President Biden will want to emphasize that in the people that he brings to the White House and in the people that he invites to the state dinner. These state dinners are a way to sort of have a social interaction that could potentially lead to something bigger down the line. And so I think that that is really the emphasis today. It's not necessarily the cheering crowds that we saw under President Trump, but it is a signal of the importance of the relationship to this administration and to the United States.
Absolutely. Well, that certainly has been underscored with the state visit. Kevin, thanks a lot for your time. And we'll continue to go back across to our colleagues from the CNN as we continue with this coverage. Max Abrahams, author and international affairs expert who met Prime Minister Modi in a close circle meeting, is also live with us. Max, I was very intrigued by what you said earlier. You talked about how Prime Minister Modi has this image that, you know, of an autocrat, or there are other words that are thrown around for him. And particularly, he comes under scrutiny, and India under him comes under scrutiny for the treatment of minorities. I was just actually watching, President Obama has given an interview to our sister concern CNN in the US, where Xi Jinping of China and India's Narendra Modi have been talked in the same breath. And concerns over minority treatment has been spoken about by the president as well. How do you see these concerns being raised while the Prime Minister is in the US?
Well, that is part of the visit, is that, you know, when you have any leader, it's not going to be, you know, uniformly well received. And so the knock against Modi is that he is illiberal when it comes to minorities, especially Muslims in India. But, and you know, some American politicians, especially the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, they're the ones sort of playing up this anti-Modi message. People like Bernie Sanders, for example, I believe that they might be recusing themselves or boycotting Modi's talk to Congress. But I do think that that's a minority view among American officials, both Democrats and Republicans, and I think that it's also a minority view across the American public.
Okay.
There are all sorts of reasons to support stronger U.S. relations with India. You know, for starters, it's very important in terms of the economy. India is the most populous country in the world. It's recently overtaken China. It's very, educated, a lot of very smart people there working on, all of the sort of new technology, which is going to usher in this new economy in terms of AI, in terms of semiconductors. it's also very useful in terms of our foreign policy, in terms of acting as a deterrent against China's expansion.
Okay.
And it's also going to help to hopefully wean India off of Russian weapons. And so there are all sorts of reasons to be supportive. And on top of that, Modi, I've seen in polls around the world, is the most popular national leader of any country. And so the main story is that there's American enthusiasm for this unprecedented meeting. And yes, of course, there are some critics, but I think that that's really a marginal part of the visit.
All right. Max Ibrahim, thanks a lot for sparing your time and thanks a lot for sharing your thoughts. I also want to cut across to the White House where managing editor Zaka Jacob is joining us live. Zaka, it looks like some part of that ceremonial welcome is kickstarting.
That's correct. I'm asking my camera person, Ravinder. So we're overlooking the south side of the White House. These are the south lawns. You can see the people who've gathered here. About 5,000 of them is what we have told. They're a little quiet now because, like you said, a part of the ceremony has just begun. If Ravinder can pan his camera towards his left a little, you can see the U.S. Marines, all three wings of the services, the Army, Navy and Air Force. They're all gathered there. The military ceremonial part has just started. We're awaiting the two dignitaries, the President of the United States and Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi and his cavalcade is expected to arrive in the next few minutes. And once he arrives, the official ceremony will begin. But you can see the military sort of with their guard of honor, and you can see the blue of the Air Force, the white of the Navy, and the black uniforms of the U.S. Marines. So they're there. So it's quite a surreal atmosphere. You have, just a few minutes ago, this sort of raucous crowd that was chanting Modi, Modi in the background. And now just moments as we started with this live, the ceremonial part has started and you can almost literally hear a pin drop, except, of course, the military leaders who are leading this Guard of Honor ceremony. Of course, once the Prime Minister lands here, he will be accompanied by President Biden. They will be Prime Minister will have the privilege of taking the Guard of Honor, the military Guard of Honor. There will be a military gun salute. We are given to understand it's a 21-gun salute that will be given to the Prime Minister, the visiting dignitary. This is almost, like I said, a surreal atmosphere on the south lawns of the White House, overlooking this magnificent construction. You have the Indian flag and the U.S. flag, fluttering along side by side, and then you have members of the military holding the flags of the various states in the U.S., the 50 states in the United States. So, just moments from now, we're expecting the Prime Minister and his delegation to arrive. The ceremony is going on right now. The military official drill is going on right now. So, like I said, it's a bit of a political rally meets a rock concert meets, of course, this very, very dignified and somber military Guard of Honor. So it's like everything is happening as you hear the military band play now. You can hear the music in the background. So it's clearly, like I said, it's a bit of a festive time, really, in this in the south lawns of the White House. I was speaking to some fellow reporters who were here in 2014 when Prime Minister first visited. Also speaking to some other reporters who were here in 2009 when Dr. Manmohan Singh, as Prime Minister, got a state banquet and a state visit. He said the atmosphere was very different. It was there were far fewer people, and clearly nobody was chanting anyone's name at that time. But this is, like I said, almost like an amalgamation of a political rally meeting a rock concert, and then, of course, now you have the dignity and the somber mood of a military Guard of Honor. So all of it is happening. This pomp and ceremony, it's expected to kick off at in about 10 minutes' time. The whole ceremony, I'm given to understand, will last for 1 hour. After which both the Prime Minister and the President will head inside the White House for the official bilateral level talks that will begin, the delegation level talks. A whole bunch of agreements are expected to be hammered out, thrashed and signed during those talks, including, some relief for H-1B visa holders in terms of their re-stamp on their passport. They will not have to travel outside the US to get that done. Consulates will be open both in Bengaluru and in Ahmedabad. And conversely and reciprocally, India will be opening a consulate office in Seattle. And of course, we've been talking for a number of days now about the defense deals, about the Predator armed drones, about the jet engine deal, which has now been made official by both GE and HAL. So a whole bunch of strategic, economic, and of course, people-to-people bilateral issues, agreements will be signed during the course of this meeting. And it is going to go down as one of the most defining and momentous visits undertaken by an Indian Prime Minister to the United States.
I also want to go across to Mary Milburn, American singer who has sung for US presidents and many world leaders, joining us live. She was part of the Yoga Day event session with Prime Minister Modi earlier and will be performing 4th of PM at the Diaspora event tomorrow. Mary, thanks a lot for joining us. You've always expressed a lot of love for India. How excited are you to be performing for the Prime Minister tomorrow?
Well, Shivani, it's great to see you, and hello to all the CNN News 18 family. It is such a wonderful just honor to be a part of the Prime Minister's state arrival visit here in the United States. I am so excited and just elated to be performing tomorrow for the Prime Minister and so many guests that are here in the United States for the visit, and certainly all of the wonderful family, the Indian American community family here in the United States, and folks from all over the country in the diaspora that have come here to Washington, D.C. for the Prime Minister's visit. So it's a tremendous honor. I tell you, I have such love for India, as you alluded to,
yes.
And such great admiration and respect for the Prime Minister.
Mary, we're just possibly minutes away from the Prime Minister arriving at the White House. So I want to dive right in. I want you to give us a little bit of a snippet into what you're going to be doing tomorrow.
Absolutely. Well, and I'm so sorry that I'm not with all of my friends and family at the White House. You know, when you're preparing for a performance, you have to have a little day of rest. And so today is my day of rest before performing tomorrow. But it's going to be wonderful festivities at the White House today and certainly this evening for the Prime Minister's State Arrival Gala. And certainly I know that the President and the First Lady and all of the White House are so excited to have the Prime Minister here in Washington, D.C. Tomorrow, I am so grateful to the steering committee for the Prime Minister's arrival visit that invited me to perform tomorrow to an invitation-only diaspora event at the Ronald Reagan Building International Trade Center. They're just a block over from the White House tomorrow evening. And this, if I'm not mistaken, is the last formal event for the Prime Minister before he exits the United States. And so I'm just honored to be able to perform perform, to sing the Indian national anthem, which is an anthem that I have come to love in so many aspects. You know, I have been so honored to perform the national anthem and patriotic music here in the United States for 4 consecutive U.S. presidents, for President Bush, President Obama, President Trump, and certainly it was wonderful to perform here recently this last December for President Biden as we honored our World War II veterans here in the United States. And so to have this opportunity to welcome the Prime Minister and sing the Indian national anthem, you know, the United States and India, you know this, it's the most important relationship in the world. And so we share these common bonds of democracy and freedom. And so both of our anthems speak to democracy and freedom. And so to sing the Indian national anthem for the Prime Minister during his visit, it's a tremendous honor, and I'm looking forward to it.
Well, I'm sure it's going to be goosebump inducing for us. Our national anthem is that for us, and we look forward to your rendition. I remember you have sung one of the most prominent aartis in India, Om Jai Jagdish. Yeah. And I saw that video a few years ago, I think, and that's when I first got introduced to you. And you make so much effort to get your Hindi right and your diction right. You must really be into this.
Well, I have to first thank my wonderful Hindi coach, Dr. Mokshraj, who is based there in Rajasthan in India. He was serving as the cultural diplomat at the Embassy of India during COVID year. That's how we were introduced through the ambassador from India. And we started Hindi classes and then preparing for those performances, certainly the performance that you've seen on Jai Jagadish Hare. And I tell you, Dr. Mokshraj, he gets a lot of credit for certainly my success when it comes to the language and certainly learning about India. He's been such a great teacher. And I loved preparing for that performance because that song, which I understand certainly now is a song that every household grows up learning, it's very similar to us in the United States. I am a woman of faith, and Amazing Grace is very similar to Jai Jagadish Hare, a song that we grow up learning in our homes as children. And so learning that Hindu hymn, learning the words of that Hindu hymn, it was very meaningful to me, and certainly to present it during the Diwali observance during the 2020. So I love India, and I love this beautiful family. I call India my family. You know, that's what I love so much, Shivani, about the G20 summit motto. And I'll go to this: the one earth, one family, one future. We really are a family all over the world. And when we see humanity that way, we can truly impact the world in greater measures when we see life as a family. And so I love the motto that is for the G20 summit, because the United States and India, we really are a family. We're a family that is bonded in the ideals of democracy and freedom. And so lifting that hymn during Diwali, it brought back those important values of family, those important values of faith, those important values of religious freedom, certainly as it speaks to the religious aspects of that hymn. And so I'm just delighted to be a part of this wonderful celebration for the Prime Minister. I'm looking forward to being back in India during the G20 summit timeframe, and certainly
I look forward to meeting you here, and of course we can have another chat at that time when you come to India. Mary, we're just preparing for the Prime Minister's arrival. I have about 30 seconds. You want to sing anything for us, just to give us a glimpse?
Sure. Well, how about a little bit of the anthem? You have 30 seconds, so I'll sing the end. Jaya hai, Jaya hai, Jaya hai, Jaya, 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 Jaya hai.
All right. Mary Milburn, thanks a lot, and all the very best for your performance and the rendition of the Indian national anthem tomorrow. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, Shivani, thanks so much.
Keeping our eyes on the American dignitaries now, part of the government, part of the Joe Biden administration. The Vice President, Kamala Harris, is there, Anthony Blinken is there, and others, all now getting set to welcome the Prime Minister for his first ceremonial welcome to the White House. He's, of course, visited the White House last evening and met the Bidens, but this is a ceremonial welcome for him as part of this state visit, which is his first state visit to the U.S. and only the third Indian Prime Minister, the third time an Indian Prime Minister has had this. This is also rare for American presidents. It is, of course, considered a mark of a very close partnership, the closest to partnerships who are accorded this state visit. We are, of course, looking forward to that all-important bilateral that will be held between President Joe Biden and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And on the other side of your screen now actually are visuals live from outside the hotel where the Prime Minister is staying in Washington, D.C. At the White House, everybody is in their positions. It seems everybody is ready. It's been a rainy day, we are told, in Washington, D.C., yet you see thousands of members of the Indian diaspora on the south lawn of the White House in anticipation to catch a glimpse of the Prime Minister. And the Prime Minister, as soon as he leaves his hotel, will get to know. Of course, it's not going to be too long a distance, but the ceremony is being perfected. There will be a 21-gun military salute, we are being told. It looks like the cavalcade is moving now. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's cavalcade moving from his hotel to the White House. I can already hear in visuals that are coming in chants of Modi, Modi being heard. They were being heard on the lawns of the White House a short while ago as well. So you can see, it looks like the Prime Minister or maybe some of the other Indian dignitaries who are arriving before the Prime Minister. All right, I'm told this is External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar who's left the hotel. So we're waiting for the Prime Minister to leave. Of course, he's going to be the last to exit. All the other Indian dignitaries and leaders who are with him on this state visit will be arriving, will be in position as US President Joe Biden welcomes Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. My colleague, Managing Editor Zaka Jacob is at the White House witnessing history. Zaka, describe the atmosphere for us.
So we've just had in the last few minutes, in the last few seconds actually, the Indian delegation, which is NSA Doval, the External Affairs Minister, the Indian Ambassador here, Taranjit Singh Sandhu, the Foreign Secretary, Vinay Quatra, the entire diplomatic corps, as it were, who are part of the delegation, will be part of the delegation level talks. They've just arrived. I'm sure you can see the pictures from my camera person Ravinder's frame. You can see Dr. Jaishankar standing there at the top of the queue. Then I can see the U.S. counterparts also. I can see Secretary Blinken. I can see Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary standing there as well. So the delegation from both sides are waiting for the principals. Prime Minister Modi will arrive. And then, of course, at the footsteps of the White House, on the south side of the White House, he will be received by both Joe Biden, the U.S. President, and his wife, Dr. Jill Biden. They will then walk up to the podium. There might be a brief interaction, if you will. And then after that, Prime Minister will be led by the U.S. President to take the ceremonial guard of honor by the military who are present here of all the three services. They will then, there is also this crowd that's gathered here. We're given to understand that they might briefly sort of walk around where the crowd is and, shake hands with them, greet them and so on. And after that, of course, after about an hour or so, the whole ceremony itself is expected to go on for about an hour. At about 11 o'clock local time, both leaders and their respective delegations are expected to go inside the White House for beginning the formal delegation-level talks. That will be followed by one-on-one talks. That will be closer to 12 o'clock. And then at 12:30, both leaders and their delegations will come out for the joint statement and for a very brief press interaction.
Right. We've seen, of course, the President, Joe Biden, welcoming Prime Minister. I believe he has tweeted out, Zaka, welcome to the White House, Mr. Prime Minister. So there is, of course, a lot of momentum as far as this relationship is concerned, and all eyes will also be on the announcements that the two leaders will formalize, some of whom we're getting a hint of already.
Absolutely. We've been talking about the defense deals, the Predator armed drone, the GE jet engine manufacturing in India along with HAL, Those are the big ticket items. And then there are, of course, the important ones that make a difference to people's lives. The H-1B visa renewals, the stamping not required now to be done outside of the United States. That, I think, is going to be huge for H-1B visa holders here in the States. The consulates that will be opening in Seattle, in Bengaluru, Ahmedabad, again, that will help, tourists and other people who want to travel both to the U.S. and to India and expedite the process of visas for them. So that's going to be another major announcement as well. There's also going to be, and I believe there are some details already out about this, about a joint manned mission between ISRO and NASA to send a person up on space. So I think that, again, would be well and truly remarkable. I think it will be the first time that ISRO and NASA are collaborating to send a manned mission into space. So all of this, the details of it will formally be announced at the press conference at 12:30. Right now, the focus in the next few minutes, in fact, in the next few seconds, I'm told, is the arrival of the Prime Minister's cavalcade and him being welcomed by both Joe Biden and Dr. Jill Biden.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States and Dr. Biden.
See the handshake and full sticks. The shot
Distinguished guests, the national anthem of the Republic of India, followed by the national anthem of the United States.